Congressman Peters, it is so nice to have you here on the rebuild. We're really excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, love to do it. Let's dive right in. So I was reading in the Wall Street Journal just on Sunday that consumers should expect electricity prices to go up this summer.
Mhm.
And yet I was also reading a few weeks ago about how congressional Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee are taking aim at green energy, even trying to like zero out programs that are helping transmission get sited
Right.
and built, even while we know we need more electricity to keep people's energy prices down. I know this is an issue you've worked on for a while, and are going to be focusing on this new Build America caucus. So
Yeah.
that's what I want to first ask you about is just like, what are some of your ideas for reforming some of these permitting processes so that we can accelerate green energy deployment?
Well, Professor, you're alluding to that pesky supply and demand problem, right? I mean, that's it. And I would say, for the first time in some decades, we're going to see an increase in demand for electricity because of AI, because of reshoring manufacturing, both under policies driven by President Biden, President Trump, electrification, that load growth. Not only challenges our supply, but threatens to destabilize the grid. And we learned also from Jesse Jenkins at Princeton that if we want to realize the climate benefits of the IRA, the biggest investment in climate action in the history of the world, we need to triple the size of the grid because you need to get solar energy from places like uh, like Arizona and wind energy from places like Iowa to the places where they need it. And so, we're really challenged to do that. And I think as a result of that, we kind of face a choice in the future between higher electricity prices and astronomically higher electricity prices. So we've got to get on the job. And as you alluded, I think there's a tremendous amount of clean energy about to be connected. We have 2,600 gigawatts in line to be connected, projects to be connected. A gigawatt is roughly the size of a nuclear power plant, so that's a huge amount of energy. About 90% of that is non-emitting. So if you're interested in climate action, you're interested in energy supply, we got to get that stuff online, and we got to make everything faster. So um, the challenge we've seen is that as proud as I am of being a Democrat who voted for the Inflation Reduction Act and all that climate action, we just didn't get it into the ground. And it doesn't do us any good to have money in the bank unless we get it into the ground. So a lot of what we're seeing now is the difficulty of process. We've got it takes 4.5 years to do a big environmental impact statement, another 4 years to litigate that. For transmission projects, it's much higher. And so we've got to come and modernize our environmental laws in line with that. So some of the ideas we have are, first of all, on transmission. We'd like to pursue parity with natural gas. Natural gas is a one-stop shop. You go to FERC, and they're the lead agency. We have the FASTER Act, which we've introduced, would designate FERC as the lead agency for large interstate transmission lines as well. It's a little more complicated because they're visible, they're overground, but it's a way to coordinate federal, state, and local authorization and reduce the big timeline for those things. A second challenge is that we know we need to connect various regions, and there's no incentive for interregional cooperation. So Senator Hickenlooper and I have a Big Wires Act, which would require each region to be able to transfer at least 15% of its power to another region. That would have really helped Texas when they had their tough weather, when that awful storm where they lost people because of cold. It's a reliability issue, but it's also a cost issue.
Mhm.
And then I think we'd like to sort of just generally look at the environmental laws like the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, to see if we can't make things go faster. It was just that if you're a climate advocate, we're in the mode of needing to build stuff. If 90% of what wants to be built is non-emitting, let everything go faster. Because if you put down 10 to get 90 back, the second time you do that in a casino, you get kicked out. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, for sure. I actually wanted to focus on that Fast Track a little bit because I think this is something a lot of people don't realize
Yeah.
is that FERC treats natural gas one way, where it has national siting
Right.
authority. If you want to build natural gas from Oklahoma to Virginia, FERC has the ability to do that, and they really don't in electricity transmission.
Right.
So giving FERC that authority, you're really just putting green energy on parity with natural gas.
100%. We've got something called backstop authority. I'm sure you've heard reference
Mhm.
to, which is the idea that, we designate these national corridors and, nothing gets built in them because there's no incentive to cooperate. And so we've sort of said to FERC, okay, we'll give you backstop authority. If they don't build it in a certain amount of time, you can order it. But that was a provision that was started in one form in 2005. And in the Bush administration, Obama, Trump one, and Biden, it was never used.
Mhm.
So I think we have to come up with a different way. We think the Faster Act would be sort of a way people could understand it because
Mhm.
they've seen it work with natural gas.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing that I really like about both of these bills is they're both low or even zero cost to the taxpayer. Like these are smart ideas without
Right.
being budget busters.
Right. Right.
Um, what's been a surprising obstacle to you? It seems like such a common sense idea to me once you lay it out. What has been a surprising obstacle to you in the Faster Act, the Big Wires Act?
Well, in general, I think there's a surprise on the right, there's a surprise on the left. The surprise on the right is sort of a lack of concern about transmission. I think, maybe 10 years ago, you would have seen, well, in 2005, when the Energy Act was passed, this was well before solar and wind had been deployed. It was really a reliability issue. We were trying to recover from the big blackout we had in 2003. It was a nationwide blackout caused basically by one failure in Ohio.
Hmm.
And so the idea was connections would provide more reliability, and that was really the first attempt to really get the grid going. But now there's been the deployment of solar and wind, and people, I think, wrongly on the right see that this is competition for oil and gas, which is not. We need all the power we can get. That's what you've seen. You've seen the deployment in North Dakota and Texas of tons of wind. I mean, Texas has more wind, I think, than any place but China, literally. And it's not like they're a bunch of tree huggers in Texas. They make smart energy decisions in kind of the most perfect energy market, from a freedom of choice standpoint. So that's a surprise. I think I don't think it's ideological to have a more, to take a grid that's old and small and dumb and make it, bigger, faster, and smarter. Um, and then on the left, I think um, you don't see appreciation for the cost of time. And, I think in the 1970s, the environmental movement was trying to stop bad things from happening. We passed NEPA so that you'd at least consider the environmental effects of every decision you made that was significant and consider the alternatives. And that's very reasonable. But now, we've gotten so used to slowing things down and litigating over them. We have to realize that the things we're slowing down are things like offshore wind and utility scale solar and transmission lines and hydrogen pipelines, carbon dioxide pipelines. The things we need for climate action are stuff we have to build.
Yeah.
And on balance, if we build more, even if some oil and gas gets through, we're going to win in terms of emissions reductions. So those are kinds of the tensions we have. I think people are coming to understand that we need more electricity, and that with the demand for so much more electricity, we're all going to have to come together. And I think these will all be parts of the solution. But the politics sometimes interferes with the analytics.
No, totally agree. I teach my students a course on climate change and markets, and one of the things I like to say to them is that I grew up playing football. Like the old environmentalism was about playing defense,
Yeah.
like stop,
Yeah.
polluting. The new environmentalism, like we got the ball, we want to play offense, we want to like build things.
Yeah. And we actually want to, pick up yards.
Yeah, I would pick up yard for touchdowns, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
what it is,
100%.
more
I
climate
love it.
touchdowns
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I want to also ask you about healthcare as well. So the Inflation Reduction Act actually used a lot of your ideas about Medicare drug price negotiation from this Reduced Cost and Continued Cures Act you had written. I don't think a lot of people know that, so I would just love to hear you talk about how you came up with some of these ideas, and then what are some other ideas you have to reduce healthcare cost?
Yeah, so it was a difficult time for me. The Speaker Pelosi had this HR3, her bill on getting for the first time Medicare to be able to negotiate the prices of drugs. And of course that makes sense, right? But the problem with it was that she wanted to start negotiation, sort of almost price setting, the day the drug came out. Now, I realized that that meant that no one would ever invest in risky drug discovery, because if you don't have an opportunity to make a profit back on your risk capital,
Mhm.
you won't invest it. You'll invest in real estate or something else. And we invest about $47 billion now in the NIH in public research. The comparable number in the private sector was over $100 billion. And we put that at risk if we set this thing up wrong. So I just said, let's give a patent period to these drugs so that, once something's invented, they get their,
Mhm.
we propose 12 years or 11 or 12 years to recover that money,
Mhm.
and I think she did not believe that I was going to stick to my guns, but I just knew that for San Diego in particular, we're the third leading biotechnology cluster. This is a really important part of our economy, and we have big employers like Eli Lilly and Johnson, Novartis, but 1,000 companies doing this with 80,000 people, 1,000 companies. That means there's a lot of small outfits trying to solve hard science problems with private risk capital, and we wanted to keep that going. So I did stick to my guns. You've got tons of protests. I was threatened with primary opponents by the Democratic Party. And it was a lot of turmoil. I actually voted against our reconciliation bill when I was as a member of the Budget Committee on the Democratic side. Took tremendous blowback. Everybody in my district office became an expert in explaining the economics of drug discovery and investment. And we got through that. We did get the change made that we wanted. And I think we came out with a better bill. It's not a perfect bill, but Democrats are all very happy that for the first time we had the ability to negotiate
Mhm.
uh, prices. And, it was in a way that, the industry didn't love, because it was more restrictive, but it didn't kill it. And I think, there's some more challenges. We're still in competition against China, other countries that want to invest, but this is a place where we have the lead. And so I think that's a good thing. Another idea, I do think a lot about diagnostics, Gary.
Mhm.
Um, there's the attitude of sort of in the bureaucracy about innovation is that it's a cost. And one of the problems we face is that when we analyze what something costs in Congress, we only look at this year. So what's the outlay for this year? Well, in something like diagnostics, which is some tiny percentage of this Medicare spend, for instance, but drives 70% of Medicare decision making, the cost this year is saving money down the line. And you're
Mhm.
not really getting in as part of the analysis by the Congressional Budget Office when they analyze the cost, they don't really analyze the benefit of it. So, but there's tremendous opportunity with genomics, with blood screening for cancer,
Mhm.
with all sorts of innovations now to deploy those things today and save a ton of money down the road. And I want us to think about taking advantage of those great, mostly American inventions to help us provide better outcomes for patients and more cost-effective healthcare.
Yeah, no, totally on board with that. So, actually, some of my doctoral dissertation research was on intellectual property and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, great.
And so I've also like dug super into the weeds on like how
Right,
you actually try to like get this innovation and access
right,
up, right? And it's
right,
hard.
right.
But I think it's really cool that you guys got that drug price negotiation in there while preserving the incentive to innovate. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, thanks. I mean,
Yeah.
all the Democrats, I kind of laugh because they were so mad at me, and a lot of them don't remember why,
Well,
but they were mad at me.
yeah. Well, it's genuinely it's a challenging problem. The more you
Yeah,
dig into it, the more you're like, okay, well, there's some real like trade-offs here. So I
right,
thought
right,
it was cool
right.
what you guys did. I wanted to broaden out the conversation a little bit in terms of the abundance agenda, which is getting a lot of attention
Hmm.
for totally understandable reasons. But a lot of the conversation has been really conceptual. But like at a certain point, it does have to turn into a legislative agenda if it's going to be a real thing. Um, and so I was just wanted to ask, what are some of the bills that you've written or sponsored that advance abundance or, reduce cost of living? Are there areas where you think we can go bigger? Are there big priorities you got for this Build America caucus that you've helped to launch?
Well, I think the work I've done on permit reform is really foundational to getting more building. This is something that I was the city council president in San Diego a while back. I faced this with housing in California. If you put so many roadblocks in front of housing, for 30 years, California suppressed housing. Now we're paying the price through higher prices. And so I've been an advocate for reforming our regulatory laws. And I think actually politics is changing. There's a whole YIMBY movement. I like to think I was part of the start of that with the San Diego YIMBY Democrats that are really advocating for infill housing as not just a affordability imperative, but also an environmental imperative. Because we want our growth to occur where growth has already occurred, and I think things are moving well that way. I have a particular bill on that it's kind of cool called Build More Housing Near Transit. When I was a baby council member back in the 2000s, we decided to extend our light rail from sort of the downtown area up to the major job center up by University of California, San Diego. And it took forever to plan it. We had to pass a half-cent sales tax extension to have some local money to ask for our federal match. And it wasn't until years later when I'm in Congress that the region was able to ask for the federal money because it had all the design completed, the line selected, and the engineering done. And we were able to give them $1 billion federally to match the $1 billion locally. And now we have an extension. But it occurred to me when I was on the federal side that when I was a local council member, no one ever asked me what I was going to build next to this train. And, in fact, we had a lot of parking lots next to the train. You put the train sort of in the path of least resistance. And it seemed to me, it's good that YIMBY politics wants to fill that in and do transit-oriented development. But we should have asked as a federal government, show us your plans for what's going to drive ridership on this train. Show us your land use plan as part of the competition for federal money. So if I'm choosing between the project proposal in San Diego and the one in Raleigh, North Carolina, and the one in wherever, I want to see that you're going to get ridership out of it because we have two objectives. We want to get people out of their cars for environmental reasons. We also want to get people paying into the fare box for taxpayer reasons. Mm-hmm. And so we have a bipartisan bill called Build More Housing Near Transit that would make your housing and land use plan part of the competition for federal resources. That's a way to use federal resources, federal leverage to get locals to do the right thing. We don't have really control over those local decision making. So that's the kind of thing I think that the Build America Caucus wants to endorse. When we did, we just talked about the life sciences industry. We're in the lead in life sciences, Gary, in the world, and we want to keep it that way. We invented the semiconductor industry, and we let that go overseas. And we wish we hadn't done that, but now we've committed $50 billion in the CHIPS Act to bring that back and start building them. Where lo and behold, because you make a transfer of money to a project, it turns it into a federal project for purpose of environmental analysis. Mm-hmm. Now all these projects that are exactly where we know where they're going to go, some of them under construction, now they're subject to environmental impact review that's totally unnecessary. And we had to get an exemption for that. We had to basically do another bill. So I did a bill with Mark Kelly and with Ted.
I remember this bill. It was great.
Ted Cruz, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, it was in the. I was playing in the congressional golf tournament. We have Republicans versus Democrats, and the bill was scheduled for the next Monday. And I'm like making calls from the golf course to try to get votes. We got the 2/3 vote we needed by 2 votes. Mm-hmm. So it should have been so easy, but that's the kind of thing that you have to modernize the environmental laws to meet the needs of today. And we did that in that instance. But we have to look at whether the contribution of federal funds should really change by itself the quality of environmental review you do on a project. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. No, I think that's right. And it's been so nice to see that some of this is truly bipartisan, right? Like you and Senator Kelly, Senator Cruz on the NEPA reform to chips. Yeah. You could imagine a bipartisan effort around transmission or around the Fix Our Forests Act or
the forest. I think that's, I mean, I think the forest thing is the biggest thing going right now.
Yeah.
I met this guy, Bruce Westerman. He sat down next to me on a plane. We were on an international flight, He says, "You got a minute? You can't, you're on this flight. You really can't say no." But it was really a great meeting. He's a University of Arkansas graduate. He walked on the football team. I think he was an engineer, and then he went to the Yale School of Forestry, where so now he is the person who knows more about forestry than any other member of Congress. And he told me the stories of the sequoias in California. For the first time in 1,200 years, we lost a sequoia to fire. And the sequoias are resistant to fire at the base. They need fire to open up their seeds. But because we've suppressed natural fire in the West, like shade tolerant trees like a fir tree or a pine tree would grow up next to the sequoia, and one conveyed the fire into the canopy of the sequoia, the only place it's vulnerable, killed the tree. But Gary, since then, we've lost 20% of all the great sequoias, 3,000-year-old trees in the same way. So he said that, what we have to do is pretty clear. You have to go into the 60 groves where the sequoias grow, and you have to go restore the conditions that would have existed had fire occurred naturally over the last century. So you have to trim a lot of the extra brush. And he says you can't do a 4-year study on every grove. You need to provide an exemption. And I said, Bruce, that makes a ton of sense. Let's do it. We did the Save Our Sequoias Act. And I was really surprised by the blowback by the environmental community. Here we are trying to save the sequoias.
Hmm.
And half the environmental groups are out there saying you can't change NEPA no matter what. And they were optimizing around preserving litigation rather than preserving the resource. I thought it was really, kind of perverse. So I
Yeah.
said, we're going to take that fight. And when we did the Fix Our Forest Act, which is there's so much jamming up forest health and the ability of the Forest Service to provide it. We just reduced a lot of red tape,
Mhm.
provided a way to deal with the biomass that might come out. We still prevent clear cutting. There's no threat like that. But we did work with some of the most constructive environmental groups, the Nature Conservancy, Environmental Defense Fund, the Audubon Society really helped us.
Yep.
And I can't get all the environmental groups. If you want to optimize around litigation, that's not my deal. But
Yep.
we're going to provide healthy forests that generate less pollution when there's wildfires, more natural fires, not catastrophic fires. Completely bipartisan. And now we have a companion in the Senate, and I think we're going to get that passed.
Great. Sounds good. I wanted to sort of at the end here have a couple rapid fire questions that we like to do, if you don't mind.
All right.
All right, first one is, what is something you think is too expensive?
Women's shoes.
Okay. All right. What is an innovation that you think what is an innovation you think is overrated? Oh.
Automatic transmission.
Whoa. Okay. All right. So do you still drive a stick?
I wish I did. I had to give up the one I had. I can't find another car like I used to have, but I used to love my Mustang. By the way, I can't really drive it anymore because the miles per gallon is embarrassing, but I do miss that car.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. What is a policy or innovation you think is underrated?
Genomics.
Okay. Cool. All right. Last one. I have this sort of unorthodox, maybe absurd idea. Do you know what Patriots Day is in Massachusetts?
It's the day of the marathon, right?
Yeah, it's always the third Monday in
Yeah.
April, and it commemorates the battles of Lexington and Concord.
Right.
The state holiday. Everybody has the day off, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have this like huge gap in the calendar federally between President's Day and Memorial Day where we don't have like a nice holiday. So like my like weirdo idea is we should make Patriots Day like a federal holiday. And so I'm just curious, do you have any like favorite absurd or unorthodox policy idea that you like?
The thing that bothers me as a Californian in this building is I have 40 million people and two senators, and Delaware has, like 700,000 people and two senators. So I think you should redraw the state line so that no state is more than 10 times as populous as any other state.
So we would have like 7 or 8 Californias?
Well, you'd have to rejig you can still do 50 states, but you just have to draw the line so that, like Dakotas would get a lot bigger and there'd be a lot of little Californias. Yeah, I think that's probably right. My county has 3.4 million people in it. My county.
Your county, I
Yeah.
live in Vermont. Your
Yeah.
county has like 5 times as many people as my state.
I know. I'm not looking. Oh, where are you?
I'm in Middlebury
Oh,
College.
it's in Vermont. Yeah,
Yeah,
Vermont's the second biggest culprit. Yeah.
probably. Yeah.
I love your people though. By the way, Peter Welch is my favorite left-wing progressive. He's the nicest guy. And
Uh-huh.
then I was really rooting against Becca Balint getting elected because I thought she was a communist, and she's also the nicest person. You can't not like her. She's wonderful.
So one of the things that I really love about Vermont politics is people are nice. There is just
Yeah.
a niceness on down from,
Okay.
Governor Scott, Becca Balint, Peter
Your
Welch.
your other senator seems uncharacteristically grumpy, though.
So you say that, but I
I
was
don't
at I
know
was
him.
I was at dinner the other night, and because he lives not far away from me in Burlington,
No
and
one lives far away from you in Vermont, by the way. No
that's
one
true.
lives there.
But so a guy was relaying the story about how he ran into Bernie with his daughter, and Bernie asked his daughter how old she was, and she said 5, and she showed him like 5 fingers, and so Bernie goes, "You know how old I am?" And he just starts flashing fingers over and over and over again. So
That's
like
cute.
it's hilarious, right?
Good.
Um, so like even Bernie, I think is actually like a pretty nice guy. I like the niceness of Vermont politics.
Good. Yeah. No, good people. Pretty place too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. We're really thrilled you came on. I loved talking to you. And I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Gary. Respect the markets.